This week, someone asked me, how do you get people to trust you? What an interesting question. I suppose the obvious response is to demonstrate trustworthiness. But is there more to it than that? My name is Ian Currey and this is Thinking Out Loud. Come on, let me tell you what I think. Hello again. Today I thought I'd start by answering a couple of questions I often get asked about these videos. How do you come up with the content each week? And do you really think that way? Well, mostly the things I present are things that I've been thinking about recently. Sometimes it's a recurring theme that has surfaced in a slightly different way, and sometimes it's something out of the blue that has grabbed my attention. What I try to do is to present whatever it is after I've had a chance to undo the knots and illogical thought processes that so often bog us down. So yes, these videos really do represent how I think about things. Do you actually believe in God, or do you just use God as a way to explain things you don't understand? Yes, I actually believe in God. I reject a lot of what is done in His name and an awful lot of the religious nonsense that goes on out there. But yes, I believe in God. Far from contradicting my logical, technical thinking mind, I find God exceptionally trustworthy. Why don't you talk about politics and current affairs or address the hot topics of the day? Those things, of course, do shape my thinking. So in a way, I am addressing those subjects, but this video series is an honest look at how I personally process the things I'm struggling with or thinking about. As I process those things, I write down what I'm thinking, and then, if I think you'd enjoy those thoughts too, I make them into a video. Politics has an ever-changing face and tends to divide people who would otherwise be able to enjoy each other's company. That's partly why I don't like politics getting into church settings, and why I like to rely on the constant and consistency of an unchanging God. Having said that, I must say that the death of the Queen this week has given me a lot to think about. The funeral, right about now, so full of symbolism and pageantry, I'm sure will be a time for many of us to reflect. I can imagine having another think about servant leadership or loyalty perhaps in future videos. Most people in Britain have experienced the consistency and stability the Queen has brought to certain aspects of life there in the UK. You knew what to expect. When the Queen showed up, there would be decorum, protocol, and respect. I think if I were king, some of the nonsense thrown at the monarch would drive me nuts. I might find myself getting annoyed and saying, "Off with their heads," rather more quickly than the Queen appeared to do. But instead, her wit and humour shone in such instances. Studying how God reacts to those nonsense questions sometimes surprises me too. Gideon was once summoned to the palace, as it were, and asked to lead an army. In his case, instead of getting on with his commission, he famously put out a lamb's fleece. You can find the story tucked away in the book of Judges in the Old Testament. Then Gideon said to God, "If you are truly going to use me to rescue Israel, as promised, prove it to me in this way. I'll put out a wool fleece on the threshing floor tonight, and if the fleece is wet with dew in the morning, but the ground is dry, then I will know you're going to rescue Israel as you promised." And that is just what happened. When Gideon got up early the next morning, he squeezed the fleece and wrung out a whole bowlful of water. And this is where the off with his head thing would have kicked in if I were God for a day. Then Gideon said to God, please don't be angry with me, but let me make one more request. Let me use the fleece for one more test. This time let the fleece remain dry while the ground around it is wet with dew. So that night God did as Gideon asked. The fleece was dry in the morning, but the ground was covered with dew. Now you'd think that would be the end of the story. But if you turn the page and read on, God has a little fun with Gideon in return. Gideon gets the nation's huge army together. Well, not that huge. His army was well outnumbered. Think Russia, Ukraine outnumbered. See, I do mention current affairs. I can see why Gideon wanted to make sure he could trust God, but look at what God does. Here comes Gideon at the head of the nation's army, and the Lord says to Gideon, "You have too many warriors with you. If I let all of you fight the Midianites, the Israelites will boast to me that they have saved themselves by their own strength." Details of the story are given there, but the end result is that the army is reduced down by 2/3 to just 10,000. I wonder if God might be thinking about that fleece Gideon used. I wonder if Gideon is thinking about it too. Do you still trust me now, Gideon? Just when Gideon is getting used to his now massively reduced fighting force, the Lord told Gideon, "There are still too many." A lot has been made of how the division was made, and indeed it is something to think about, and I'm sure interesting. But the result was that the army of 32,000 had now been reduced to just 300. Second fleece, anyone? Still trust me, Gideon? The Lord told Gideon, "With these 300 men, I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home." You can read how the battle was indeed won using just those 300 soldiers in the next couple of chapters there. It's quite a story. God showed himself to be trustworthy by doing what he had done many times before, doing what he said he would. I started this video thinking about that question I was asked. How do you get people to trust you? Trust isn't something you can demand or expect. Trust has to be earned, doesn't it? Now, Gideon did trust God, but really only after using that strange fleece thing. God seems to have had a fun way of making his point by increasing the need to trust him. The more Gideon asked, but how do I know I can trust you? God, of course, is totally trustworthy. He has demonstrated an unchangeable nature, an integrity, and a consistently consistent response to each situation along the way. You don't find God saying, I think I'll do it this way instead now. I changed my mind on that. Integrity, honesty, a strong character that stays unflappable and true, predictable and dependable. Those are the reasons people will trust you. They've seen it all before from you. How do I get people to trust me? By following the example of God and being those things. By letting people see that I respond consistently to situations. By doing what I say I will do. Honesty and integrity are character traits that still have immense value, despite really being demonstrated by politicians these days. There now, is that political enough for you? Until next time, goodbye.